In this video, we'll take a look at how to create a sheet, and then once we've created the sheet, how to nest parts onto the sheet. So if you have purchased the nesting module, you have this nest tab here. So from this tab, you can also select machine and material. You can create a part like we did back on the cam tab. And then you've also got the create sheet icon, which is also on the cam tab. So if we're going to nest, we need a sheet here. So click on create. And down here at the bottom, it's prompting me to select objects or press enter to pull up a list of available standard sheets. So if I just hit enter, it'll bring up this little dialog box here. It'll show whatever rectangular sheets I've already defined on here. If you want to add a new size, just click on the plus sign and type in the dimensions, and then it'll be in that list there. So if we want to use a 48 by 96-inch sheet, can click on that and OK. And then you can type in information about the name for tracking it, collar width, so if you want to leave material around the edge of the sheet to allow for clamps all around the sheet, you can set that there. This use clamp zones box, if this is checked, it can leave additional material either on one edge or multiple edges if you need additional room for clamping. The size of this clamp zone is defined in the machine settings file. So if we just cancel out of here for right now and go back to the machine, so click on the machine settings, edit machine button here. On this first selection here, table layout, if you scroll down a bit, you've got this area for clamp zones. So if you always want to default to using clamp zones, then you can check that box here. Or if you typically don't want to use it, you can uncheck it here and you can always check it later. And then you can specify left, right, top, bottom clamping zones. So it's nice, and that gives you a little bit more flexibility if you do need more room, just maybe on the left and right edges of the sheet for clamping. So that's where that is. And if we go back to our create sheet again, hit enter, 48 by 96 sheet. So collar width, we talked about clamp zones. Show name, it'll use this name when it does the nest, and you'll be able to see it on the screen so you can identify which is which. And then the size of the text that it shows there. And then you can just click on OK, and now it's showing the sheet. So if I left click, and then if I move my mouse around, it'll change the orientation of the sheet on the screen. So generally want this to correspond with how it would be laying on your table. So I'll just left click at this point here, so the sheet will be left to right on the table. So that's one way of defining a sheet. You can also draw what a sheet looks like. So you can just, if you have a remnant piece of material, you can just draw that out. So I'll just rough in something here. So if I've got a piece of material that looks something like this, and we'll just close that up here. And then these do have to be joined together as one entity. So I'm just going to select all of these and use my join command, tolerance of 0, just hit enter. So now when I click on this, this is all one entity. So if I go back to the nest tab, click on create again. This time, instead of hitting enter to list the standard sheets that we looked at, I'm going to do the select objects, so I can just now click on this and hit enter, and then again brings up this dialog box where you can again make these different selections here. So these are in pink, those represent sheets. If you want more than, if you think you're going to need more than one sheet, or you can just use your copy command and you can put multiple sheets on the screen. For the nesting, you got various options here: quick, glide, single, rectangle, circle. You should have the auto nest option typically, and that's the one most people just use. Just click on auto, and then down here at the bottom it's asking to select objects, so I can just drag a box around the pieces and hit enter, and then it'll bring up this window here. So it's got the files, it's got how many pieces are going to be nested. If you decide at this point that you want more or less of these, down here in the bottom in this remaining box, you can just change your quantity. If you want to change multiples, you can use your control or shift keys and you can select multiple files. So if we decide we want 15 of those, we can change that. You've got your rotation options, so if you've got a part that has to be oriented on the sheet in a certain area because of grain direction, and maybe this part here we always want it oriented on the sheet this way, you've got this rotation selection here, so we could say, alright, we'll do a 180 rotation, which will allow it to go this way on the sheet or spin around 180. So you've got those different options there. Some things, like if it's just a circle, save a little bit of nesting time, you could just set it to like none for the rotation since it may not matter. But depending on where the lead-in is, if the lead-in's at like a 3 o'clock position, then you might want to do rotation. So you got all sorts of different options there that you can choose from. And then you got your distance between your parts, so you can adjust that as you see fit based on the material and the thickness of the material and such. If you have multiple cutting heads on the machine, you can select how many cutting heads you want to use. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a different video. And then you've got your options as far as how you want to nest the parts on the sheet. So with a Waterjet machine, we typically have the 00 bottom right hand corner. So you can either start bottom right and work zigzag up and down. If you click on this image here, it'll go through the different options that you can use to nest the parts onto the sheet. So we'll go with this one here. Grid accuracy, if it's further to the right, it's going to look take basically finer slices of that sheet as it's doing it. The nesting might take a little bit longer. You can generally just leave that in the middle there, and then click on Nest. And now at the bottom it's saying select sheets and obstacles, so then you can just select the different sheets, hit enter, and it'll start going through and doing the optimization. So wherever possible, it'll put parts within parts within parts if the parts are small enough and the openings are big enough. So it'll give us information here about how many parts it nested. This is a listing of all the different permutations that it's gone through. So if you saw a nesting layout earlier in the cycle that you wanted to go back to, you can always select it from the list here. So you can let this go for quite a while. Once you've got it how you like it, you can click on the stop button and then click on OK, and it'll bring you back to the screen here. So then we can see in this column here, we've got 5 of those left. Let's see, so if we hit nest again, let's see if it'll get those onto the sheet. So looks like it did get them on there now. And so now we've got everything nested, and then you can hit the close button here. Brings us back to here. So you can click on this this browser button up here. This will show a listing of all the parts and how many were nested. So this part here, the text is in green, indicating that it nested 10 out of 10. Here it's in red because it nested more than what we had originally for the quantity. So it nested 15, and originally we had wanted 10 of those. If you click on the part, it'll show you where the part is in the nest, and click on cleanup drawing, and it'll make those parts basically disappear from the drawing and just show you what's left, what hasn't been nested. So that's the part browser. Let me get those parts back there. And there's also the report button that you can click on, so then you can select the various sheets and hit enter, and it'll generate a little report and show you the name of the sheets and size of the sheets and how much of the material was used. Also lock out a sheet, so maybe like this sheet down here where we've only used relatively small amount of the material, we can lock that sheet and use it later. So if you go to the sheet submenu here and click on the lock button, and then we can drag a box around that sheet, and then it'll recognize where we've cut parts out of that sheet, and then if you wanted to nest additional parts later. So if we go back to auto, and we'll just select these pieces again, and I'm just gonna specify 10 for all of these here, and tab out of there, and then nest, and then select the sheet, so now it recognizes that you can't cut anything in those areas, and then it'll put those parts onto the sheet. And there's also the from hole option here, so if you have a large drop like in these circles left over, you can use this from hole command, and you can click on the inside of a circle like this and basically create a sheet out of that, so that's sometimes helpful. Once you do have your nest the way that you like it, the next step would be to just add your 0, point onto the sheets. So you can go back to the cam tab and click on the order button, and then you can drag a box around the individual sheets here. So just do that one at a time, and then you can go through. This is the cut sequence on the sheet right now. If you wanted to change cut order, you can use these arrows here to move things up and down in the cut sequence. If you want to change the way it's working through the sheet, right now it's left to right. So if you want to change that, you can change that and click on sort. So you've got that. There's also tip-up avoidance in here, where if you click on that, it will try to find areas where the jet might be crossing over somewhere where it already cut. So we click on find collisions. On that sheet it didn't find any collisions, so let me see if I can, let me bump this number up a little bit so we can find some collisions here. So basically this is the path that it's looking around the nozzle for potential areas that's crossing over other parts. And so okay, so now it did find something. So basically what it's showing with this is that it's finishing this part, and then there's a traverse to come down to start this part here. So it's saying, well, there's a potential that maybe this part's gonna tip up. And what you can do is you can just basically click and add additional traverse moves to get around that part. So it can click a couple times, and once you've got a rapid sequence that you like, you can just hit the space bar, and then it'll go through and find the next potential collision point. So here again, it's finishing that part, and it's coming over to this one here. And this one, I'd look at that, I wouldn't worry about this because it hasn't even cut this part, so even if this part tipped up, it's moving away from it, so I just hit the space bar and go to the next one. Now this one, it's finishing this part, and then it's going to be traversing over to here to start this part. Now there's the potential that maybe this part had tipped up, so again, you could add some additional traversing to get around that. And if you have a machine that's got programmable Z, you could just use the programmable Z option and move up and down between parts. So here we'll click here and hit space. So you just kind of work your way through the sheet like this, and once it's done, then you can go on to the next sheet. So we'll just quickly finish this off here. Let's see, we'll put one in there, put one in there. Oh, let's see, I guess we'll head up this way, space bar to get to the next one. So obviously, depending on the complexity of the nest, it might take a few minutes to go through this, but can be time well spent to avoid breaking nozzles. Let's see, that shouldn't be a problem, so I'll just space bar through that one. Let's see, we'll come over here, space, and we'll come down there. We can come back this way. And so sometimes there just may be situations where you can't avoid it. You'll just have to keep an eye on it. And let's see, so we're coming down here. So of course, if you are going to have clamps along the edge there, we'd want to avoid going that way, but kind of see if we can get through that way. This is obviously a pretty complex nest, so alright, so that's done. And then you can do the same thing on the other nests again. Just click on your order button and you can go through that collision avoidance if you want to. And then once you've got your 00 set, then you can just go ahead and create your NC files. Try this again. There we go. Good. If you have any questions on that, let us know. Thanks.